If you enjoy terrifying stories like this, subscribe to Disturbing Stories, hit the like button, share the video with your friends, and turn on notifications to never miss the next chilling tale. Now let's begin. Every Halloween, my friends and I would follow a tradition, telling ghost stories and daring each other to explore haunted places in town. It was harmless fun, at least that's what we thought. But last year, everything changed. We made the mistake of picking the wrong story to chase, and now I can't forget the things we saw. I still wake up at night drenched in sweat, haunted by the memories of what happened. I'm writing this because part of me thinks sharing this will help me make sense of it. But deep down, I know some things are better left untold. It started the week before Halloween. We were at Mike's house, scrolling through the usual urban legends online, trying to decide which haunted place we'd visit this time. That's when we found the story of the Hollow Man. According to the legend, if you walk through the woods behind the old water mill on Halloween night, you might meet him. The story said the Hollow Man wasn't a ghost, but something worse. Something that took the form of whoever got lost in those woods, wearing their face like a mask. People who encountered him were never seen again, and their families always claimed that whoever returned looked the same, but wasn't really them. It was the perfect challenge. None of us believed in the story, of course. It was just a creepy urban legend to get in the mood for Halloween. So we made a plan. On October 31st, we'd go to the old water mill, walk through the woods, and see if anything weird happened. It felt like a typical night out, just with a bit more adrenaline. When Halloween finally arrived, the weather was perfect, cool, with a thick fog settling over the town by sunset. We geared up with flashlights, snacks, and portable speakers to keep the vibe light. There were 4 of us, me, Mike, Emma, and Sarah. We'd been friends since elementary school, so this was just another crazy night in our long list of adventures. Or so we thought. The walk to the water mill took longer than expected. The dirt trail was overgrown, and the mist made it hard to see more than a few feet ahead. As we walked deeper into the woods, the sounds of the town faded away, leaving only the crunch of leaves underfoot and the occasional hoot of an owl. At first, we joked around to keep the mood up, laughing about how the Hollow Man was probably just some creepy old guy trying to scare kids off his property. But as the forest grew darker, the laughter started to fade. Something about the woods felt wrong. When we finally reached the watermill, the place looked like a scene from a horror movie. The building was barely standing, its wooden walls rotting and sagging, the water wheel broken and silent. But what really caught my attention was the stillness. There was no wind, no animal sounds, nothing, just silence. Even the fog seemed heavier around the mill, pressing in on us like a suffocating blanket. We paused for a moment, exchanging uneasy glances. I could tell the others felt it too. Something was off. But none of us wanted to back out. Not now, after we'd come this far. So we took a deep breath and stepped into the woods behind the mill. That's when everything started to go wrong. The path through the forest was barely visible, just a thin strip of dirt winding between the trees. The deeper we went, the more disoriented we became. It felt like the forest was shifting around us, twisting and rearranging itself to keep us lost. Every time we thought we were going in a straight line, we'd end up circling back to the same clearing. And then came the whispers. At first, we thought it was just the wind, but the sound was too deliberate. Low, murmuring voices drifted through the trees, speaking words we couldn't understand. They were everywhere, behind us, ahead of us, to the sides, always just out of reach. Emma grabbed my arm, her face pale as she whispered, "Did you hear that?" I nodded, my throat dry. We all heard it. We tried to joke it off, blaming the fog and our imagination. But the fear was growing. It was like the forest was watching us, waiting for something. And then we saw him. At the edge of the clearing stood a figure. He was tall and thin, his body almost blending with the mist. But the most horrifying part was his face, because it was mine. It was like looking in a warped mirror. My own features stretched into something cold and empty. The figure tilted its head slightly, as if studying me, and then it smiled. But the smile wasn't mine. It was too wide, too sharp, too wrong. Mike cursed under his breath, grabbing my arm and pulling me back. "Run," he whispered, and we did. We sprinted through the woods, not knowing where we were going, just trying to escape. But no matter how fast we ran, the figure was always there, appearing ahead of us, behind us, to the side, as if the forest itself was helping it. And with every glimpse, his face became clearer, more like mine, until I couldn't tell if I was running from him or from myself. We stumbled out of the woods at some point, breathless and terrified. But something was wrong. The town looked different, like it hadn't been touched in years. Windows were broken, streetlights flickered, and the air smelled of decay. We tried calling for help, but our phones had no signal. It was like we had stepped into a version of our town that didn't belong to us. We made our way to Mike's house, hoping his parents could help us figure out what was going on. But when we got there, the door was wide open, and the house was empty. No furniture, no photos, nothing. Just empty rooms filled with dust and cobwebs. And then we saw the writing on the wall, scrawled in jagged, blood-red letters. "You are already home." Panic set in. We ran from house to house, but every place was the same. Abandoned, decayed, and empty. The streets were silent, except for the sound of footsteps that weren't ours. It was like the town had been waiting for us, like we had always belonged to this twisted, hollow version of reality. And the worst part was we weren't alone. The figures followed us everywhere. They looked just like us, wearing our faces with that same horrible smile. No matter where we turned, they were there, waiting, watching, mimicking our every move. It felt like we were trapped in a nightmare we couldn't wake up from. Running in circles through a town that didn't exist. Eventually, we made it back to the woods, hoping we could somehow retrace our steps and escape. But the forest was different now. Darker, colder, and alive with whispers. The trees seemed to move when we weren't looking, closing off paths and leading us deeper into the darkness. And then we saw the water mill again, standing in the middle of the forest like it had never been abandoned. The wheel was turning, creaking loudly, and the air smelled of wet wood and decay. We knew we shouldn't go inside, but something compelled us, like an invisible hand pushing us forward. The moment we stepped through the door, the world seemed to shift. The walls warped, the floor twisted beneath our feet, and the air was filled with the sound of distant laughter. Our laughter, but wrong, distorted. And then everything went dark. I don't remember how long we were trapped in that darkness. Hours, days, maybe longer. When I woke up, I was lying on the forest floor, alone. My friends were gone, and the town was back to normal, except for one thing. Every time I look in the mirror, I see him, the hollow man, wearing my face, smiling with that same terrible grin. I don't know if I ever really escaped the woods that night. Sometimes, I hear whispers in the dark corners of my room, calling me back. And every Halloween, I feel the urge to return to the water mill, like the forest is waiting for me to come home. Maybe one day I will. But until then, I'll keep telling the story, hoping someone will believe me. If you enjoyed the story and want more terrifying tales, subscribe to Disturbing Stories, hit the like button, share this video, and turn on notifications to stay updated. You never know what other horrors might be lurking just out of sight. See you in the next story if you're brave enough.